Okay, continuing on with short-term outreaches or outreach teams. So we'll just kind of go through some logistics. I wanted to have Dave here because I think Dave just kind of makes it personal. He can talk about his personal experiences, what he's done. Look, we could sit around here and talk about mission experiences all day. I mean, this is kind of fun. You know, there's always adventures when you just travel to other places, other countries. That's just kind of part of the deal. But you're doing it in Jesus' name. You're not just going on a trip. You're not a tourist. You're doing it in Jesus' name. And so hopefully you're doing it with the right heart and the right attitude to, to serve the Lord, to help advance the kingdom. Okay, so how many of you have actually been on a short-term trip? Okay, yeah, so most of you. So you understand the gist of it. It's kind of a new thing. I mean, you guys are probably accustomed to it. Every year our church does, 3 or 4 or 5 short-term trips. We do a bunch. I think last year we probably had over 150 people go out to short-term trips. So say if we have a church of say 1,500 people, that's about a tithe of our church actually went out on the mission field somewhere, which I think is pretty cool. And the goal is even to kick that up even more, to increase that. I want to get more people exposed to missions and doing these short-term trips. But it's kind of a newer thing. Calvary Chapels are actually given credit for kind of pioneering the short-term trip deal. I don't know if it was the first or what, but I think the ones that really maybe took it to the next level and really monopolize on it and really try to make it more and more effective. So I've heard that. I don't know if that's totally true, but I've heard that Calvary Chapel is really kind of at least kind of started getting that going, or at least part of getting it going. Okay, so just a few things we can go through. Why or what is a short-term trip? Okay, so it's hard to kind of put a clear definition on short-term trip, but I try to here. You have people from all walks of life who travel to another country to come alongside an active church or ministry, or to help in planting church. Like, Dave Granada, his goal is ultimately to plant a new church in an area that's really unreached or doesn't have, a strong church in that area. And so there is a Calvary Chapel on the island, but it's a big island. So there's definitely room for other Calvary Chapels or other works. So, look, the idea is I want to come alongside and help those that already are doing the work. And a lot of times we're kind of a boost to them. It's kind of like we just kind of add this extra juice. Just bam, we kind of help, builds, enthusiasm. It gets people more excited. We sometimes bring resources. We bring kind of more people that can get a project done. And so a lot of times for those that are on the ground, either missionaries or the local church, it really kind of helps get them to the next level. It kind of builds this excitement. And so, because look, we're going to be there, we're going to do some work, but then we're going to leave, and it's going to be that ministry that's hopefully going to carry on anything that we help start. Does that make sense? So we might start something, but we're not there to finish the job. So you need long-term care. In order to fulfill the Great Commission, you'll never get there by short-term trips. Short-term trips will not fulfill the Great Commission. The Great Commission is really fulfilled by people from one culture going to another culture and living there. Where you really have, they call it incarnation ministry. You know what that means? Incarnation. Jesus was incarnate. Incarnation, he became man. God became man in the flesh. He lived and dwelled among us. Well, the same idea for missions, that we go and live with people long term. Not just a flash in the pan, which short-term missions is kind of like that. It's kind of this flash, kind of quick, kind of exciting, kind of dramatic, but then we pull out. And so it's the long-term people that really continue that work. What's great is that what if we lead someone to the Lord? Well, if there's people on the ground that can actually follow up with them and disciple them. If there isn't, it's like you just, in a sense, gave birth to someone, right? Like there's this baby, spiritually, a spiritual baby, and then you just leave them on the sidewalk. You would never do that. That'd be like you get arrested for leaving a baby on the sidewalk, right? Well, spiritually, we can do the same thing if we don't pass off maybe the work that we started. Like, hey, we help start something spiritually, but then we need those that are going to continue it on and help people grow in maturity. So, look, there's definitely a place for short-term trips. I think it's really awesome. A lot of times it's youth. Youth drive the short-term missions market, you could say. For whatever reason, there's kind of this passion. Most youth groups go on some sort of trips. Doesn't mean you have to go to another country. It could be right, in San Francisco, like interns went to San Francisco. Could be Alaska, could be, New York or LA. When I was in high school, our church went to a Native American tribe and actually went to, their land and did some work there. And so that was very cool. So we've done a lot of different kind of works. It doesn't have to necessarily be, Mexico, Honduras, Haiti, Africa. It can be right here in the States. There's a lot of mission fields. Okay, usually they're 1 to 2 weeks long. Some people do a month-long trip, but not that many people can pull out of their normal life for that long, or 2 months or whatever. You have bills to pay, you have jobs, you have school, you have other obligations. But usually most trips are 10 to 12 days. That's kind of the average. There's no biblical precedent like this is what a short-term trip looks like biblically. It doesn't really exist as far as there's this clear model because it's always looking different. People would go and help out a certain work for a season or a period. Sometimes it's short, sometimes it's longer. You look at Paul, which we're going to look at in a couple classes from now, his life and his missionary journeys. Sometimes he stayed in a place for a couple years. Sometimes it was just like a couple days. And so there's kind of this, depending on how the Spirit leads him, depends on how long he'll stay there. Sometimes he actually gets the green light. I feel like the Lord just really spoke to him. No, you'll be safe here. I have a work for you to do here. There's many that believe here, and I want you to stay and pour into them and equip them. So it really depends on the situation. Okay, usually teams are 10 to 30 people. It doesn't have to. You guys are like, 5, 6? I went to San Francisco, 7. We've taken teams over 100 to Costa Rica, or even a couple hundred to Mexico in the past. Those get harder to kind of manage. It's a logistical challenge for sure, but if you have the right people in place to kind of organize those things, then it's definitely doable. Usually they're smaller. Oh, Katrina was a big one in the South. When the hurricane came through, it felt like the youth of our country, the Christian youth, rebuilt the South. I went on a plane to go with a team to do some construction in Mississippi. On that plane, it felt like 75% were youth, all wearing different color or different type Christian t-shirts for their church. Going to this, one shirt had a big old storm on the back, and on the back it quoted Jesus saying, "Be still." And it was pretty cool. But man, I felt like the youth really stepped up to rebuild, Louisiana and Mississippi. It was really cool to see. Usually travel to a third world nation. That term, third world, is no longer necessarily PC. Now the term that most people would use would be developing nation. Okay, what's interesting about that term, developing nation, not all that kind of sends a signal that it's developing, it's moving forward. Not all countries are moving forward. I've been in some countries that you feel like this country is going nowhere, in a secular sense. Spiritually, maybe, but necessarily. So it's funny to call every nation third world now call it developing, because not all of them are developing. The hope is they would, but not all are. Some are really kind of stuck. And then I have down here, usually help in very practical ways. It could be from, sweeping to painting to maybe putting on a conference, equipping the leaders and the youth, take care of the kids so the parents can, be distraction-free. It could be going on outreaches to villages that no one else has gone to. There's a lot of, the list go on and on of practically ways you can help. And look, here's the goal. Do you just want to hammer some nails? Well, there's probably someone better at doing that than us. We're usually not the most equipped team when it comes to those kind of things. But see, that's not always the point. The point is that they see us Americans willing to give up our time and resources to come to their place and to sacrifice and serve them and to love them. So we're not always, for me to hammer a nail, probably takes me 3 times longer than Dave Granada, who actually understands construction trade. I'm not the best guy with a hammer, or any kind of tool for that matter. But yet I do it because I hope that it's a springboard to be able to share the gospel, to be able to do real ministry, and be able to earn a right to be able to speak into someone's life and encourage someone in the faith. Does that make sense? So I swing a hammer, not because I'm good at it. I swing a hammer so hopefully it earns me a right to be able to speak to someone's life spiritually. I want the physical thing to lead to the spiritual. And that's really the point. I don't want to come back from a trip and go, yeah, we built this great goat pen. Is that all you did? Yeah, that's all I did. No, I want to use it for spiritual reasons. I want that physical thing to be a blessing in a way that opens spiritual doors. Does that make sense? So if you ever get caught up in just the physical work part of it, I feel like we can miss it. And I've been a part of maybe even teams, or maybe that was too much of the focus is the physical part and maybe skipping the spiritual. I think there should be at least a healthy balance between the two. There should be a physical aspect, I believe, but really a spiritual aspect. Okay, so who is it for? Who should go on these trips? Anyone. Look, I really believe anyone, and everyone should go, anyone with a willing heart. Sometimes we have an application is necessary if the trip is a little more challenging. Some trips are easier, some trips are harder. Some trips, maybe it's not for everyone on that particular trip. Maybe some trips are a little more for the experienced traveler. Maybe, someone that does have a little more skill, like Inga Lil's team, bless you, Inga Lil's team in Nepal. It's really more of like a dental medical trip. So I wouldn't be as good on a trip like that because I really have no skill or background in those areas. So some trips require different skill levels. So we always try to have trips throughout the year that really anyone can jump into, and varying levels. Some are going to be more specialized, some really just anyone can jump in. Especially like Mexico or inner city places are great, like first time mission trip places that anyone can do. I wouldn't send just anyone to Thailand. I wouldn't just send anyone to maybe Ethiopia. I think maybe that would be maybe your second or third trip kind of deal, or maybe a little farther down the road. This is where you can see special gifts are utilized. Look, I want to find people that maybe have artistic ability, maybe musical ability, maybe contractor, nurse, dentist, all kind of plays in there. But what's great is that all of us have gifts. I mean, God's wired us. I think the challenge for the leadership is to find the right fit. How can I put this group of people to work the best way? Okay, so what do we do on a trip? All right, so the list is long, right? Construction. We've done everything from roofing to floors, kids' classrooms, benches. Like the benches we have, we actually brought a bench down to Rosarito, and they took it apart, measured it, and built more of them down there. It was really cool. We sacrificed one, so it multiplied to like 70. It was great.
Stack like ours. We were stacking them in Rosarito, and I'm like, they stack really well like ours.
Yeah, because
they're like identical.
Yeah,
They're looking that.
Yeah, because they are. Yeah, they just. They are. Except they designed a 2-seater, which we don't have. We have a 4-seater, a 3-seater, but they actually designed a 4-seater or 2-seater to fit into their rows, and it's actually cool. Yeah. Okay. Sometimes we work with orphanages. We'll go into orphanages and give gifts. Sometimes, we've done Christmas at these places before, and we kind of bring things that maybe they never have. Sometimes some of these kids have no possessions, or they might have this old ragged, stuffed doll, and that's all they have, their only possessions. So it's cool to kind of bring gifts, but I don't want that to be so much, Americans here, they were going to bring gifts. It's a balance. You want to have a balance. VBS, sometimes we'll put on something for the kids so the staff actually get a break. These staff that are at orphanages or other ministries are like year-round. It's a strenuous deal. Sometimes we serve lunch, as we did. We kind of went to these orphanages last summer, and we'll serve lunch. We'll kind of help out. We served lunch at this elderly home in Rosarito, and kid you not, they didn't know we were bringing lunch, and we show up, they're like, praise the Lord. We didn't know what we were going to do for lunch for serving these 100 elderly people, and we're just going to make some kind of soup and add a little flavor in it or something, and I was like, we brought pizza and watermelon and spaghetti, and yeah, it was awesome. So the Lord provides. We'll do gospel bracelets for the orphanage, the list goes on. Evangelism. Sometimes it's organized, sometimes it's more street witnessing. Sometimes we'll put on a big event, we'll have a band and ask people to come and lead people to Christ right there. Sometimes just more one-on-one kind of street witnessing. Like Ireland. People go, well, you're doing an outreach to Ireland? Come on, they don't have orphanages, they don't really have needs. Yeah, but they have spiritual needs. And so that is primarily like street witnessing. So trips can look different, right? San Francisco, there's a lot of physical needs, but there's also spiritual needs. It's got the mix, right? So it just depends where you go. Visitation ministry, So we'll go to people's homes. When we were in Honduras, we actually would go to someone's home and, hey, how can we pray for you? And it opens up a door, and most people are willing to receive that. And we come in, you start kind of finding out about their habits and what they're doing and, what their issues are. And so you pray for them, and, it's really cool. And sometimes you hook people up. You go, oh, you have an issue? Well, I know this guy down the way that can help with that. And so sometimes the Lord just really works out those connections. We'll visit hospitals. We've gone into jails before, share the gospel. Sometimes we'll bring, like food and different things into the jails, because some jails, they get nothing, unless family or friends come provide it for them. We've gone into rehabs. Feed-in ministry, we deliver food boxes before. We've gone into like inner city areas and bring, lunch or dinner or like a box full of food they'll supply for a few days. We've done what we call blessings ministry, which is like cleaning up the beach, or we'll, take out weeds of the schoolyard kind of thing. So the list can go on and on. Done youth outreaches. Sometimes we've actually gone to camp. Like in Costa Rica, this is kind of different. You can see the variety, right, is huge. In Costa Rica, what we would do is our kids would go to this camp, and them going, what they would pay would sponsor a Costa Rican kid to go. And these kids aren't Christians, aren't church kids. They would actually have to check their alcohol and drugs at the step, put it in a box as they get into the bus, because these are secular kids that have a lot of issues. And so they would come, and then our kids would be in the cabins with these Costa Rican kids that don't know the Lord, and through those relationships would really win them over. They would just say, yeah, just getting to know these American Christians, I want what they have. I want the hope they have, and they give their lives to the Lord. So it's really cool. We do camp with them. So just like you do a Christian camp, you have games, you have fun times, you also have Bible lessons, you have worship times. And so God does really cool work. But I think it's also through not just the camp, it's through the relationships, that our kids hang out with their kids. Sometimes when we equip the local church, we'll do like leadership conferences. We do that in Germany, especially in Scotland last year, other places where we actually go in and we'll bring guys, like say we'll bring, Pastor Daniel to talk to the youth guys about youth ministry, or I can talk to guys about doing a small group or whatever. And so that's kind of the way it works. Usually the days are very long, very full, but we always try to have some fun time at the end, at least a day or two that's just kind of, hey, debrief. We want to work hard, but also play hard. So any question with all that? Okay. Yeah, here's us. Look, Mikey right there. Pastor Dave Wally, some of you might know. Do you know who that is? Sammy? That's Anna's brother. Yeah, so a few years ago. So this is in a town near Tijuana that we're on the roof. And this is the winter, but it was one of those warm days. Yeah, there we are. Look at it's Kevin. Yeah. This is when Kevin was an intern, This is like, 3 years ago. Yeah, we did 400 burgers. I mean, look at that. Like, that's just that's just like 50 or so, but yeah, and hot dogs.
Is that Marley in the background? No. Like right there? I
don't think so. Yeah. Here we are building the benches. Yeah. There's my son, yeah. Yeah, there's Doug. I don't know if you know all these guys. Yeah. Here we are. Look at we're building them right there. It's fun. Here's the orphanage. So I held this kid for like 45 minutes, and I thought my arm was, and he was happy. Yeah, he was like, I had to go to set him down. He'd be like, what are you doing? Set me down. So I just held him. Yeah, I thought my arm was going to fall off. Okay, so I know it's small print. I'll go through it though. Okay, why should you do it? Okay, you should know this because I'll probably ask you this, hint, hint, somewhere down the road. Why should you do a trip? I'm not expecting you to know all 13, but you should be familiar with this and be able to at least put down some. One, you'll grow in your faith. You'll be stretched. Whole point of a trip like this is like Gumby is that you'll be stretched. And during that time of stretching, God just does a work in us. It takes you outside your comfort zone. We need to be put outside of our comfort zone. We need to be challenged in ways we normally aren't challenged. And that's how you grow in your faith. It's like a muscle that just needs to be worked, needs to be stretched. So, look, you're going to grow in your faith because you'll be put in situations that will be challenging. They'll be beyond what you're normally used to. Number two, you'll be forced to leave your comfort zone. It makes you thankful for what you do have. I remember taking this junior high girl to the Philippines, and you know what she shared back at church? You know what she shared? It was really funny. She goes, and there were kids that had clothes that didn't match. Like, that was shocking to her. You know, like the shirt didn't match the pants kind of thing, you know? And it's like, and she was thankful. It made her more thankful for what she has. These kids, a lot of these places, that's what they own. What they're wearing is basically, that's their wardrobe. In Ethiopia, this guy had a tank top, and I think it was his only tank top. The strap right here in the shoulder broke. You know what he did? Did he throw it away? No, he tied it. So it was his tighter. He didn't care. I thought it was awesome. Okay, number 3. You get to use your gifts and talents for eternal results. So each one of us has gifts, you have abilities, you get to actually use it for kingdom things, and that could be new for a lot of us. Number 4, you become culturally aware. You just realize that America isn't the only culture. Our ways aren't always the best ways or the only ways to get things done. You realize, man, there's other places do things differently, and they survive. There's places that drive on the left side of the road, and it's okay. You know, like, you just kind of learn that our way isn't the only way. And it's good to kind of have our paradigm just switched on us, you know, of realizing, hey, people do things, they eat different foods that we maybe wouldn't like or whatever. And so there's just something you become culturally aware and just realize, look, the world is so much bigger than our American experience. And it's really good for us to be exposed to that. Especially, I think, youth. I think it's really good for youth to see how a majority of the world lives without maybe a car. Kids in Ethiopia, first time maybe you'll put them in a car, they start throwing up because it's like, for them, they're going on a roller coaster. They've never been in a car. Their bodies actually physically aren't used to it, and it's normal. There's a girl, we get picked up from the airport, there's a girl behind me that was throwing up most of the time, and it was like normal. Everyone's like, oh, just hand her a bag, because that's what Ethiopians do, because they're not used to riding in cars. And it's just good for us just to realize that we are so, even if you have a junky, beat up Pinto car, you even know what Pinto is? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even if you have the worst car, you are richer than probably 80% of the world because you actually have a car to drive. So it helps us be thankful. Number 5, you bond with other believers. So you actually connect with others. On a trip like that, it's like, man, it's almost kind of like the battle type mentality, or in war, you bond, you know, in a war because you're in this common struggle, this common foe that you're against. Well, same thing, I think, spiritually, is you bond together, bless you. Because, look, it's challenging, and you connect with people. You'll be okay. Yeah.
It's just Ebola.
Yeah, it's okay. Number 6, realize that your church is much bigger. The church is much bigger and more diverse than the church in your own area. It's great to go to churches of other cultures and realize, hey, churches, other places do it differently. I remember when I was preaching in the Philippines, and they would say, you need to teach at least an hour. At least. Like, you're welcome to go longer, but at least an hour. And you're like, really? Why an hour? Well, if you're not willing to go an hour, they kind of feel like, why even, it's not really worth for you to stand up there. Like, that's just what they're used to. People at one of these churches we visited in the Philippines would walk 2 hours each day just to come to the church. And so they were so blessed on the way home, we actually dropped them off near their house, or at least cut their trip down by a lot, and they were so blessed, because there is just different for them, you know. It was basically church was an all-day experience. For us in America, it's an hour and a half experience, usually. A lot of places, it's an all-day experience. It's like, yes, we get to hang out at church. Yes, we get to hang out with other believers. And it's so cool to see how the churches worship, their style's a little different, how they function, what the buildings actually even look like. So it's good for us to break the mold of how we think church should be. Number 7, challenge you to share your faith in simple, practical ways. I think sometimes we make it too complicated, and I think when you have the gospel translated in different language when you share, you use very simple concepts, very simple words, so I think it's good for us. Number 8, you become more dependent on the Lord. You just realize, I can't do this on my own. You know, I can't do it. This is beyond me, and it forces us to trust the Lord in ways we normally maybe won't or hadn't. So more dependent on the Lord. 9, you see God's heart for the entire world. See that God loves these people. I remember walking around certain places, maybe in Thailand, and just looking at the lostness in people's eyes and realizing, you know what? God loves that person. And apart from Christ, apart from them coming to the knowledge of Jesus Christ, they're going to hell. And do I care? Do I care? And it opens my eyes to God's heart for the world. 10, great entry experience for getting a taste for long-term missions. If you want to be even a long-term missionary or even have the inkling, you need to start here. And a lot of times the hope is we bring people on these trips that it will grow people to become long-term missionaries. I would hope that short-term missions would turn into long-term missions for a lot of people. That'd be an ultimate win for me, is that those trips are so productive and so encouraging in people's walk. They'd be like, man, I want to do this for forever. I want to do this the rest of my life. 11, it's more blessed to give than to receive. You know, that we just kind of learn the beauty of giving. I mean, those are actually words of Jesus. It's more blessed to give than to receive. 12, larger percentage of those that go on mission outreaches continue in some sort of leadership in the church. Okay, so it's good for the church. If you go on one of these outreaches, a lot of people come back and are involved in a greater way in the church. Maybe even serve more, become part of leadership. I think of Ryan Hillner. He was on that trip, that first trip we took to Thailand, and he's a youth pastor. And out of that group, actually he went to the Philippines actually 2 years before that with us. And out of that group, I took 12, what was I thinking, right? I took 12 junior hires to the Philippines. And junior hires, right? I didn't know what I was doing, what was I thinking, but we took them there, and God did a radical work through these youth. We even had Jesse Newton, do you know Jesse Newton? Some of you might. He's real tall, Dr. Dave Newton's son. And he actually shared the gospel, and kids came forward. You know, in junior hire. This is like an 8th grader. I mean, it was really cool. Yeah, this is all 8th graders at the time. May have a couple 7th graders, yeah. But I look at that, God's still using a lot of these kids today that are now like older and married and have kids of their own. It makes me feel really old too. All right, so 13, growing experience for parents to let their kids go. Okay, so parents that let their kids go, it's good for them. Why? Well, because they have to trust the Lord. Some of these parents, there was actually one family that the parents, I don't believe, were Christians, and they actually ended up coming to faith, I believe, during that process because they had to trust the Lord. They were kind of freaked out about their kid going to the Philippines, and through it all, I think other parents witnessed and kind of ministered to them, and they ended up really having to trust the Lord, and it was really cool. So God did a work in the parents as well. Okay, so you guys good with that? Why should the church do it? Well, we talked about this a little bit. Way for people to gain a heart for missions. So, look, we should all be on mission for Christ. We tend to think of it as vocation. I need to go somewhere, but we should have this mentality of I'm on mission. And we want more people to have a heart for the lost and heart for our world. Way to develop leaders. Look, a lot of leaders come out of mission trips, just the way it works. You know, so if I look for those that want to take the next step in faith, it's probably I'm going to start looking at those that went on a trip, because that's probably going to be my pool to work with. Another one is way to support and encourage your missionaries in the field. Bless you. It is going around the table. It's weird. Okay, so look, we can encourage our missionaries in the field by sending teams. And so, look, we're not going to fulfill the Great Commission necessarily by short-term outreaches, but it gives a boost to the local missionaries in the churches. And you know, a lot of ways, the missionaries that are out there, they're just like, man, I was discouraged, and then you guys came, and it just set things on fire again for us spiritually and got our focus back. And so it also blesses our missionaries. We support about 25 missionaries at any given time out on the mission field. And so ideally, we want to connect and work with them. How do you prepare? How do you prepare for it? Well, you have personal fundraising. If you're going to go on a trip, a lot of times people send out support letters. It's interesting. I tell people, if you're going to send out support letters, just send it to anyone that God puts on your heart. One time, me and my wife were raising support to go to Denver for a year, and her grandmother was not a believer. So I thought, why would I send her a support letter? That's crazy. But the Lord just kept putting her on my heart. So I did. I sent the letter. Well, guess what? She ended up being our biggest supporter. And every month for a year, I sent a newsletter to her somewhere in there talking about what Jesus did in the gospel. And so basically she paid us to witness to her for 12 months. How cool is that? And then certain people I thought for sure were going to give, didn't give. And And it was weird. I thought, these people like us, I'm really connected to them. They have a lot of resources, this, no problem, right? Maybe they wouldn't give. Well, what did it teach me? It taught me to put my faith in the Lord, not in people. Trust the Lord to work in people's hearts who he wants to come alongside and support that work, and not put my faith in a person because they have, a big bank account or drive a fancy car. Because we can kind of put our faith in that. Not meaning to, but it's easy to. And then you can just do side jobs. My son Caden, he kind of paid for it by going to Ethiopia last year with us. He pretty much paid for it by pet sitting, doing yard work, stuff like that, and that's kind of how he kind of footed the bill. He went to my parents' house in the Bay Area and he shredded papers for hours and hours. They had cases and cases and they paid him like $100 and he was stoked, yeah. Find other jobs, kind of deal. So I think it's good. Logistics, obviously you got to get your passport, you got to round up personal supplies, you got to pack, bring special gifts to new friends. This just kind of give you the feel of, if you haven't been on a trip, there's a lot that goes into it. Passport's always an issue. There's always someone that needs to get their passport renewed and they lag on it or don't have one. Yeah. And so there's always that. It's cool to bring special gifts. I'll go to Costco and I'll actually ask missionaries, what do you desire? What do you want? You know what they tell me? I brought for missionaries, you know what they want sometimes? I just want some Jelly Bellies. I just want some tortillas. I just want Hostess Ding Dongs. I brought pinto beans. I brought C's candy. Yeah, just things they can't get maybe on the mission field. That's what they like. Okay, how should a team train? We have team building activities. Sometimes we do the rope. What's that?
It's so tight.
I know, small. Yeah. Come on, you should have good eyes. You got glasses. You're okay. Yeah.
That's exactly why I have glasses.
Yeah.
You're the kind of person that made him have glasses.
Yeah. I feel partly responsible. Yeah. Team building activities. You pray together as a team. You work together as a team. Team building, a lot of times we'll work, do something together. Like you have to accomplish this task. We'll have, all this team building. You have the ropes course type things, whatever. We'll get kind of goofy and do some of that. Praying together as a team is really important. Is that, hey, look, we don't want to just get there and all of a sudden try to be spiritual. It's like, hey, we want to start that process before. This one's huge. Journaling, reading through the Bible. Oftentimes, the real change happens before we actually go on the trip. Let's face it, most people that attend church don't read their Bible on a regular basis. That might shock you a little bit. And if you don't, I would challenge you to get in. Set a routine that you read the Bible every morning, not because you have to, not for schoolwork, for credit, but because you want to, just to abide in Christ, spend time with Him. So what we would do for junior hires, before we went to the Philippines, they had a journal through the whole New Testament. They read a chapter, and then they wrote down a verse that spoke to them and wrote down what it spoke to them and basically would share that. And they did that through the whole New Testament. Junior hires did this. Well, you can imagine what happened. They start reading the Bible, they start actually thinking about it, praying about it. God starts doing a work in their heart. I had a parent come to me and goes, "What did you do to my daughter? She cleans her room and without being asked, and she doesn't talk back to me anymore." I go, I didn't do anything. I didn't tell her to clean her room. I didn't tell her to not stop talking back to you. I didn't even know she did. And so God was doing a work in her because she was spending time with the Lord and in His Word. It was one of those beautiful things. It's almost like the trip itself was like the icing on the cake. God was doing the work before we actually left. So a lot of times we'll do journaling. Practically equipping, we'll take people out on State Street. I've taken people out on State Street and just basically give them a little quiz. I want you to ask people a few questions and hopefully it leads to a spiritual conversation. So we do that. I challenge people to give their testimony. I would have each one of you stand up here and share within 3 minutes, what God has done in your life and how you became a Christian. You should be able to share your testimony in maybe a 2-minute version, a 5-minute version, a 10-minute version, 30-second version. You should have different versions that no matter what the setting is, you can jump on it and not just have this one size fits all. You should be able to teach the Bible lesson to kids. I don't go anywhere without having a couple messages in my back pocket. But you should too if you go on a trip because you know what? You're going to have opportunities and you never know when you're going to get tapped on the shoulder. One time, again, we're in the Philippines, worship had started at this church. The pastor I was with, that was really my mentor at the time, looked over at me and he did this. He pointed at me And then he did this, and he pointed up at the pulpit. You know what he was telling, from across the church. He was telling me, I'm doing the message. And I was going, how many songs do I have left? And I'm flipping through, I'm going, what am I going to teach, you know? And I came across a passage in the Sermon on the Mount that I had all kinds of notes next to, and I was like, that's what I'm doing. So I did this because I wrote these notes. I was so thankful. So it taught me, always be ready, you know, just always be ready. Fundraising, so I put that on, you know, on purpose, kind of being funny, because they should be fun. They should be, you know, you do them together. We did these massive yard sales. We would do like these huge yard sales that would make, you know, a lot of money. We did car washes, bake sales, burrito sales, pancake breakfasts, bike-a-thons, huge. We'd have people sponsor us, and we'd go on 25-mile. I took junior hires high schoolers on 25-mile bike rides to raise money. And they would say, could you support me $1 a mile? And people go, oh, sure, you know, so that's $25 per sponsor. We did silent auctions. People would go to businesses and, hey, will you donate, you know, a gift certificate for this restaurant? Or go to Ace Hardware, they donated a garden hose, and we'd set them out and people would bid on them in a silent auction, made a lot of money. Some people collected cans. One guy collected cans and bottles and paid for them to go to Costa Rica. It was really cool. He would go to our events, because our events, we tend not to do the recycling thing. We're kind of bad that way, we should. But he would set out his own trash cans for recycling and take them home after our events, and like he'd totally cash in. It was awesome. Yeah. Cultural training, we'll talk about, you know, things you should do or shouldn't do. You know, some of that is like, in some cultures, it's bad to touch someone's head. So of course, what does our team do with the children? Well, let's play duck, duck, goose. Duck, duck, you know, and the elders are watching this going, they're touching their heads, because in maybe some cultures, like Indonesia, the heads are sacred. You don't touch someone's head. So we're playing duck, duck, goose, right? So we're totally offending right off the plane, you know. And so we need to learn some of these things. You know, what's offensive? What's good in this culture? One time, we're at this internet cafe, and something didn't work right. I think the guy lost, one of our people, they lost their email, and he was kind of upset. So he goes up to the person at the counter, he kind of slams his money down. Well, the person was so upset that he reported us back to the church because we offended them. And you're like, what do you do? Well, that was like, that was a shameful thing, you know, to do, is slam down your money. You know, we probably don't think much about it in America, but to them, that was like totally, you might as well punch the guy in the face. It was so offensive, you know, to just kind of slam down your money like that, you know. Like, here's my money, you know. I don't think the guy had quite that attitude, but he definitely wasn't too happy at the moment and kind of put down his money. And so we had to go back and we had to apologize for this guy, and we had to, you know, just because he put some change down on the table a little too forcefully. It's good to be culturally aware of what offends and what doesn't, you know, and you don't want to set up roadblocks. You don't want to hinder your ministry because we're just kind of, you know, clueless. Usually they give us a lot of grace. They understand, you know, we're Americans. They get it. Like every time I go to Germany, right, the Germans are like, oh, you Americans, you know, they kind of give us grace. We're kind of silly. Yeah, you know, they get it. So, oh, you know a huge one? Yeah, I know, you're laughing, huh? Us Americans, yeah. You know what Americans are known for? Yeah, loud, proud, and fat. That's what I've been told. It sounds pretty accurate to me for the most part, you know, so yeah, that's kind of what we're known for, yeah. What's that? Are the Americans, and the Americans are kind of like the ones, if you put all cultures in a room, the Americans are the ones that pretty much are going to like go mix it up with everyone. Be like, hey, I'm Troy, what's your name, you know, and we're just kind of the assertive ones. I think we just kind of come into the room, you know, with confidence. I don't know, it's just one of those funny things, and so, I always try to be aware of that and go, okay, I'm not representing America. I'm representing Jesus. I'm not, you know, I really got to try to, okay, I don't want to bring my culture, even though I know you can't separate, look, I mean, you get it. I can't separate Troy from my culture totally, but at least I can try to make an effort. I can try to, you know.
Taylor.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, for instance, in Ireland, I'm in Ireland. We're in a shopping mall in Ireland, and everyone's talking like this, real quiet. We could have lunch, and David Guzik, I actually met David there one time, and he goes, listen, do you hear that? We can have a conversation. In American Mall, you have to talk like this in American Mall because we're all so loud, and it's loud. And Ireland's like, you can have a conversation because everyone's talking like this and everyone's just kind of quiet. And everyone wears like, just darker colors. Like, I think some guys wear basically a black sweater most of the winter. Like, that's what they wear. And like us Americans have all these bright colors and all this, and so I just want to be kind of aware of those things, not to wear my bright Hawaiian shirt to Ireland. That's probably not going to go over all that well, and so I'm going to be sensitive, at least best I can. I think we can go overboard and try to be overly sensitive, but I think at least we want to at least make an effort and try to. Does that make sense? Okay, so who benefits? Oh, look, there's our team going somewhere, maybe Indonesia, I think.
That looks like our church.
That's right, out front.
Okay, never mind.
I'm,
Really king.
good job. Did you say that? Oh, you said that.
No, that was Kenny.
That was awesome.
It wasn't me. What?
Okay, who benefits? Team or nationals?
Whoa.
Both. It's a partnership. Look, they should be blessed. We should be blessed. It's a two-way deal. It really should be. The team helps in the short run. The church is established to follow up and continue the work. So, look, we help. We hopefully charge it up a little bit, get some things going, maybe boost some ministry, but yet we're going to leave. We're going to pull out, and they're going to continue the work. And so it should be this neat partnership that takes place. The team benefits from the experience. I think the team definitely grows. Our team gets a lot out of growing in their faith, being exposed to new challenges, being stretched. You make new friends. I mean, it's just a kind of a win-win all around. The church gets a boost. Maybe it helps their evangelism. Sometimes it helps financially because we're able to kind of bring some resources. Like, we've gone certain places will help them put a roof on that they would not be able to afford if we didn't come. And I usually come, willing to foot the bill for some construction costs or to help them put in a new fridge in their house or whatever. I try to come with that mindset. So it does help them as well. Sometimes with building, sometimes just encouragement. They benefit just by just kind of being encouraged and loved on. And look, the mission field is challenging. It's tough. They get kind of beat up spiritually, and I think our job is kind of, no, you can do this. We're with you. We're going to keep praying for you. And so it helps them stay with it. Okay, so this is awesome. This is a home fellowship that basically there's 3 of us pastors. At each night, they would drop us off at different home fellowships. This one particular, these are some of the people there. I was standing in the hallway with a pulpit, and I was in the hallway of intersection of 3 rooms. There was like the living room, like the kitchen, and another room, and I was continually, it was weird. If I just preached right here, I'd be preaching to the wall. It was a weird deal. I couldn't see all that many because that's the way the house was, but I was in the hallway, like this weird intersection between the 3 rooms, and they could all hear me, and hopefully a few could see me, and did the teaching. That's where it was. And so they gave me, these things, which to them was a big deal. Like, they saved up probably a lot to give me this scarf and to give me this wrap. And I just thought it was really cool. For them, that was a sacrifice, And then, of course, my Americanness, I'm like, well, they don't even match. What's the deal, right? Just kidding. Okay, but that was really fun. That was a fun night. Here we are. That's, of course, Dave, who just shared. Here we are in Roatan. If you went in Roatan, the boats are the way to get around. See those houses? They're all on stilts.
That's so cool.
And so I've never been in a water-based society like this that boats are how you get around. Like where me and Dave were, you could not drive a car to our house where we were staying, where I was like shivering all day, because I was sick. If we wanted to get over to the church, we had to flag someone down or someone would come get us, and we'd hear them. They'd yell up at us from the dock and be like, hey, your ride's here. And we'd come down and they'd put us in the boat and take us over. And then they would have to find the gas can because if you left the gas can in the boat, someone would steal it. So it's like, who has the gas can? Oh, let's go find the gas can. Find the gas can. Oh, where's the key? Where's the key? And then you get the key. And then you can take you back over to your house. So that's the way it works. Okay, so the model Jesus has for us, Jesus sent out teams. We don't really think about this, but Jesus sent out short-term teams. He didn't send them out forever. He sent out short-term teams. He gathered, as you can see here, gathered a group of disciples and poured into them for 3 years. So he had his team, he pours into them, but then he left. And he gave the charge of the ministry and the work over to them. Okay, but we also see in the second point there, as part of this discipleship process, to train them, there's kind of boot camp. And boot camp was, he sent them out to share the good news about the kingdom. they went into other places, other villages. Jesus sent them out, and this is preparing them for the long-term ministry after he left the earth. And so part of the discipleship process, which I think is neat, because I think for discipleship among us in the American church, part of that is sending people out on these short-term trips. I think that's part of the discipleship process that God can really use. I think it's accelerated spiritual growth God can do on a trip like this. Okay, and then he sent out the 12 disciples, where you see that he spent a lot of time with these guys. He sent them out. But then we also see that he sent out the 72. There's a wider group of disciples as well. He had the inner circle, then there was kind of the next level of the 72 that he would send out. And did you ever send out someone by themselves?
No.
How'd they go?
By twos.
2 by 2, yeah. So no one was ever alone. There was always this 2 by 2 mentality where they sent them out.
2 by 2 would be 4 people. Do something in pairs.
Right, I know, but that's the biblical language, is that, yeah, don't overthink it. Okay. And then, see here, point 5, after he rose from the dead, each gospel account shares a commissioning that Jesus gave his disciples. As the Father sent me, so I am sending you. Go and make disciples of all the nations. So each gospel of the 4 gospels shares some kind of sending out. There's a commissioning that Jesus has for the disciples. He commissions them to go out into all the world. Okay, then some final thoughts here. Hopefully at the end of the trip, after you return, you realize that you don't need to go to another country to be used of God. I don't have to go to Africa or the Philippines or Brazil in order to be used of God. I could be used of God right here in Santa Barbara. And you start hopefully taking on a missional attitude. You don't realize I don't have to be in a location. It doesn't have to be location specific to be used of God. I can be anywhere. It's a mentality. It's an attitude. On a mission trip, there's just a focus. That's just a laser precision focus you have on a mission trip. Guess what it is? It's all about the Lord. You wake up in the morning, let's have a devotion, let's read our Bible, okay, let's pray and go out and do it. And then at night you come back and you have dinner and you have fun and you revisit it. What did God do today? Everything's about Jesus. Everything you do really is for the most part really about Jesus. And so why can't we have that same kind of focus and attitude when we come back here? So that would be my goal, is that you come back and you realize I don't have to be in another country. I don't have to go somewhere else to be used of God. I can be used of God right here. You become a local missionary. I want you to see yourself as a local missionary. You are on mission right here in Santa Barbara. Like, you're a missionary. There's lost people around you. You don't think there's lost people around you? There is, all around us. Okay, 2, we hope that you'd be ruined for normal life forever. You know, just to kind of do the status quo, I would just hope you'd be ruined for it, that you would just never be able to be comfortable just kind of going through the normal routine, maybe that most people do, that you'd be ruined for it. You'd think, I can't just go back to just, doing the kind of the normal routine of just occupying space and using resources and texting my friends and whatever, that you'd be ruined for it. You go, no, God has something better for me. God has more for me. And then 4, you just realize that you're either sent or you're a sender. That was on the final, or the midterm, right? As part of the deal, is that either you're sent or you're a sender. But we all have a role to play. And I would hope that the short-term trips would help cement that idea in people's hearts that you have a role to play. No one's off the hook, really. The commission is for the church, not for just a select few. Okay, so any questions on that? There's Honduras. That's just the outback dock. Some of these docks, they would have like a pen where they had this pig, and this pig would live on this dock, just in this box, and it was like oink oink, hear it, and do its thing, and it drop right down into the, poop would drop right down the water, and you're like, I don't want to swim in that water. Here's in Russia. We have missionaries that we support that were in Russia. They're no longer there and doing cool work. It's kind of one of those. This is Japan. We ran into all these guys downtown. Yeah. It's almost a train. Yeah, it was pretty bizarre. And they were so happy to take a picture with us, Yeah, they love Michael Jackson. Like, Michael Jackson was a huge deal.
Oh, Michael Jackson.
No, there you go. Okay, well, that's the end of it. That's all I got.
Where are you in that picture?
I was taking the picture.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know if I want to be in the middle of that group. Yeah. All right. Any questions? Any thoughts? All right. So I won't be here next week. You have the week off for the reading. So no reading. We're just going to skip it. I'm just going to skip it. And I'm not going to feel bad about it.
We're skipping the reading?
You're going to skip the reading.
Feel back in.
But class is next week. So be here, of course, for the class. You'll be really blessed by Jean Quickie. And so she's going to talk about her experience of life as a missionary. So this is short-term missions. She's going to talk about long-term missions and what it's like to be a missionary on the field. Okay, so God bless you guys. See you in 2 weeks.